Be good to hear your thoughts on what has developed with the U.S. and Iran and how this relates to the urgency of driving out this regime.
Well, look, it's extremely serious. It's extremely dangerous. Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times said, "The nightmare we've all been worried about since the very beginning is now here." She's right about that, okay? That nightmare is here. And it has not been alleviated by the Iranians taking a measured response today, and then Trump's speech saying that, well, that's good and we're prepared to pull back a little bit. It's not been alleviated by this. And there's many things in this Iran attack that indicate the fascist nature of this. This is a ripping, look, it started, of course, when he ripped up the Iran agreement that was signed by Obama or negotiated under the Obama administration. And whatever that didn't alleviate either the crisis with Iran, but it certainly did ameliorate it for a period of time and set some parameters for this. But his shredding of this was a really important first step in totally upending what's been done in the Middle East. It's been a long-term aspiration of forces in the ruling class to go to war with Iran. I mean, when this deal came up, Pompeo at that time, I guess he was a congressperson at that point, said that we should send 2,000 missiles to attack Iran. That's what we should have done. He's been opposed to this for some time. But so today's speech, look, today's speech was a gangster speech. This was putting forward
Today's speech by Trump.
Today's speech by Trump, is to be clear, when in response to the Iranians sent 22 missiles towards air bases where the U.S. has troops, but that nobody was killed, and they just said this is a slap in the face, and it's not the main thing we're going to do, but it was just a slap in the face, and then he's indicated, okay, so now here's what you have to do. But let's look at this, let's look at a couple of quick things here about that indicate the ripping up of the norms, besides ripping up the Iran agreement. One, in assassinating, this was an assassination by drone of the leader, a leader of a sovereign state. Soleimani was the number 2 or number 3 person in Iran. You know, somebody wrote today, imagine if they had assassinated a vice president or a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in America. Can you imagine what would be going on here? Could you just imagine the response? Then we might actually be in World War III right away. This would be, that assassination is a breaking of international law and protocol. Now, it's true that Obama, following George W. Bush, and Obama went wild assassinating people all around the world, but these were ostensibly terrorists, people he branded as terrorists, and non-state actors, even as one was a citizen of the United States, which needs to be noted. But it's still not the same thing as this. And this was done in another sovereign country without even asking them for permission. So that's a very serious move, and it's a shot across the bow of the entire world, including anybody who's in opposition to the U.S. Because let's be clear, the U.S. was working with Soleimani in Iraq against ISIS. And they've been working with him as well as they work with all these actors, like they work with Osama bin Laden for years in the war in Afghanistan. So this is a signal to anybody who ever works with the U.S. If you cross us, we're going to take you out. You're not safe anywhere from these people. And guess who gets to decide? The Führer, Mein Kampf. That's who gets to decide. They didn't consult with Congress. Now, I'm not saying that Congress wouldn't have given a rubber stamp to it. I don't know that. But the fact that you didn't do that is actually a change in the form of rule. It's part of what fascism is. It's a change in the form of rule, saying all those decisions are exclusively made by people who are fascists. Trump is an instinctual fascist. He's been with his father. I mean, we'd spend the whole night talking about his history. But it's also important to recognize that the people in his administration who've been pushing for this, Pompeo and Pence in particular, are Christian, what we call Christian fascists, part of a political form of Christianity that believes in end times. These two people believe in end times. They don't actually care if the world goes up because they're going to be raptured up to heaven. This is extremely dangerous, and this is they do believe this. Okay, then they've written about it, they've spoken about it, and these are the people who are now running the country, trying to remake the country domestically and internationally in a different consensus. They are opposed to multiculturalism and diversity within America, looking for a white supremacist, a white America, and they're opposed to multilateralism internationally. And this speech, just two more elements about it. One is he went and overtly blamed everything that Iran has done on his predecessor.
Yeah.
Okay? That is a move that is akin to and a step beyond lock her up, which is what he said about and continues to say at rallies about Hillary Clinton. That has to be really grasped what that actually means and the implications of that within the ruling class itself. And at this point, I don't know what the response of the Democrats is exactly to this speech. I know that the pundits and the papers say, oh, we stepped back from the brink and the stock market's going up again, but this is not resolved. This was a gangster speech, though, and he threatened not only that, but the allies of the U.S. and NATO, who he's discontinually. But then here he gives them and says, "You've got to break off your relations with Iran," when they're actually involved in various ways in alliances with them and commercial deals with. So this is very serious, and it indicates the fascist nature of the regime, and that it can't be relied. And it does remind one of, I guess for the more recent generations, Tony Soprano. I hope some people also sometime watch The Godfather, but I do want to, because back in 2006, Bob Avakian gave a speech called "Bringing Forward Another Way," which is available on a pamphlet and online at revcom.us, where he quotes Ted Koppel, who was a newscaster who made his business on ABC around the original Iran hostage crisis, including that's where Trump came up with this, we're going to bomb 52 sites from. And Ted Koppel wrote an article that what Bush was saying at that time was akin to Marlon Brando, who was playing the Don Corleone, going to a meeting of the mafia saying, okay, you can have your nukes, but if even one hits anybody else, then we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. And he was making this akin to Corleone saying, okay, I'll make peace with you, but if any hair on the head of my son is touched, then all bets are off. I would say that this is in that pamphlet, Bringing Forward Another Way, which is very important because it's in this pamphlet that Avakian talks about what we see, and this is only part of the world situation, what we see in contention between the U.S. and Iran and in the Middle East is the contradiction between and the contention between a reactionary ruling class of an oppressed nation up against a reactionary ruling class of an outmoded, they use the word outmoded in both cases, outmoded ruling class of a dominant nation. And that if you support either one in this crisis, you actually you fuel the whole dynamic between the two of them. And the one that does the most damage in this situation is, in that case, a much more determinant is the U.S. So anyway, it's worth going back. I would just want to give people the recommendation, go back and take a look at that pamphlet. It has it's both prescient, which means it sees ahead into the future, and it's also and in that it's quite relevant to today. So I think people should not let down their guard on the danger of war, and it does then impact back to impeachment. Because it's, again, with only the struggle of the masses of people demanding the whole regime go, and in that context demanding no war in Iran. And if some people come at it through the other way, no war in Iran, therefore we have to drive out the regime, that's fine too. But they do have to be linked.
Great.